Hello, welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. You know those games that no one stops talking about? The ones people practically yell at you to play? The ones that make people gasp in disbelief when they find out you haven't played them. And every time you tell yourself, yeah, I'll get to it, you add it to your wish list, make a mental note, maybe you even buy it convinced that you'll play it, but somehow you never actually play it. Maybe it has turn-based combat and you think those are slow and boring. Maybe it has pixel art which you swear you can't stand. Maybe it's a JRPG and you assume it's only for weebs, or maybe it's a slow, relaxing game and you're convinced it'll be a total snooze fest. Well, let me tell you something. The people recommending those games, they're onto something. If a game is universally loved, there's probably a reason for it. And today I'm here to try, for one last time, to convince you to finally give these games a chance. Let's start with Journey. If you've ever thought, I don't really like walking simulators, or there is no way a game without dialogue could be interesting, then I need you to listen. Journey is the kind of game that proves you don't need traditional storytelling, voice acting, or even combat to create an emotional masterpiece. You start as a lone traveler in an endless desert, with one simple goal: reaching the glowing mountain in the distance. No instructions, no tutorials, just you, the sand, and the wind. As you move forward, you'll meet other players, but there is no voice chat, no usernames, no way to communicate except through small musical chimes. And yet, somehow, you'll form an unspoken bond with them. The first time you realize that this random stranger is sticking with you, helping you, guiding you, it feels magical. And the game's breathtaking music elevates the entire experience into something spiritual. People call Journey an emotional roller coaster, and they're absolutely right. It's a short game, around 2 to 3 hours long, but those 2 hours will stay with you forever. Please trust me and just play it. The next game is Nier Automata. And okay, I get it. Maybe you looked at Nier Automata and thought it's just another anime hack and slash, or maybe you've heard people talk about the multiple endings and thought, I barely have time for one playthrough, let alone 5. But I promise, this game is not what it seems. Yes, it has fast-paced combat. Yes, it has a futuristic sci-fi world full of androids and existential crisis, but underneath all of that, it has something so rare in gaming. It actually has something to say. At first glance, it might look like just another stylish action game with nothing special. You play as 2B, a battle android sent to Earth to fight off alien machines. The combat is smooth, fluid, satisfying. It's everything you would expect from a Platinum Games title. But the further you go, the more you start to realize this isn't just about robots fighting robots. The game asks huge philosophical questions about identity, free will, and what it means to be human. And those multiple endings, they aren't just different variations of the same story. Each one completely changes everything you thought you knew. By the time you reach ending E, you'll understand why people say this game is a masterpiece. So if you've been avoiding Nier Automata because of its anime aesthetic, or because you think it's just a hack and slash game, I'm here to tell you, you're missing out on one of the most thought-provoking games ever made. Now, I want to talk about Cuphead. Cuphead might be sitting in your backlog because you've heard how brutally difficult it is. And, well, yeah, it is hard, I'm not gonna lie, but that shouldn't stop you from playing one of the most unique and visually stunning games out there. The game looks like an old 1930s cartoon with beautifully fluid animations and a soundtrack straight out of a smoky jazz club. Every boss, every level, every tiny detail is so full of life and personality that you can't help but love it, even as it destroys you. And I think failing in Cuphead doesn't feel like failing in other games. You're never frustrated at the game itself, just at yourself for not dodging that last attack. And when you do finally beat that boss that's been tormenting you, it's pure euphoria. You can also play it with a friend, but maybe it's better not to if you value your friendship. Another game that really deserves a chance is Celeste. Maybe you've looked at Celeste and thought, I don't really like platformers, or I hate pixel graphics, I can't stand it, or this doesn't look fun at all. Well, I think Celeste is a game that might overcome all your judgments because I also didn't like platformers until I played it. Yes, it's a challenging platformer, but it's also deeply personal. You play as Madeline, a girl trying to climb a mountain while struggling with anxiety and self-doubt. And that's what makes Celeste special. It's not just about jumping from platform to platform. It's a game about pushing through difficulty. And the best part? It wants you to succeed. The game gives you infinite lives. Every time you fail, you respawn instantly. It doesn't punish you for messing up. It encourages you to keep going, and when you finally conquer that section you thought was impossible, the sense of accomplishment is indescribable. Even if you've never been a fan of platformers, Celeste is worth trying. It's the kind of game that makes you feel something about the character, about yourself, about what it means to keep pushing forward even when things seem impossible. Okay, let's be honest, if you've heard of OneShot, it's probably because someone cryptically told you just play it, don't look anything up. And honestly, they're right. But since this is a video convincing you to finally get to the games in your backlog, let me at least try to explain why OneShot is special, without spoiling anything. On the surface, it looks like a small pixel art indie game where you guide a little cat-like child named Nico through a strange, dying world. You're told that Nico is the only one who can save it by carrying and delivering a glowing light bulb, the world's last sun. Sounds simple, right? Just another puzzle adventure game? Wrong. OneShot breaks the fourth wall in ways that will completely mess with your expectations. It doesn't just tell a story, it involves you in it. The game knows you're playing it. It reacts to you, remembers things you do, and at times it makes you feel like you're not just controlling a character, you're responsible for them. And that's all I'm going to say. The less you know, the better. If OneShot has been sitting in your backlog, please trust me, trust everyone who told you to play it, and just play it. Next is Divinity Original Sin 2. I already know why this one is in your backlog. You played Baldur's Gate 3 and even though you didn't like turn-based combat before, it was manageable there because everything else was just so good. The story, the characters, the cinematic dialogue, it carried you through. So when you finished, you thought, I need more of this, and naturally everyone pointed you to Divinity Original Sin 2. But then you looked at it and you hesitated. The lack of cinematic cutscenes, the text-heavy dialogue, the more old-school presentation, it probably made you think, will I even care about this story? Will the turn-based combat be worth the effort if I don't have the same emotional investment? I get it, but let me tell you, if you liked Baldur's Gate 3, you're already halfway to loving Divinity Original Sin 2. The writing, still top tier. The characters, every bit as unique and weird. The world building, arguably even more reactive to your choices. And the combat, if you thought Baldur's Gate 3 gave you freedom, Divinity Original Sin is an entire sandbox of creative chaos. Wanna teleport an enemy onto a mine, electrify a puddle they're standing in, turn yourself into a literal oil barrel to roll past enemies? You can. Yes, it takes a bit more effort to get into. It doesn't hold your hand like Baldur's Gate does, but once it clicks, Divinity Original Sin 2 gives you an RPG experience that's just as deep, just as rewarding, and just as unforgettable. So if it's in your backlog because you're worried it won't compare, just trust me, it's different but in all the best ways. And finally, Firewatch. Firewatch has probably been in your backlog because you think it's just a walking simulator. Maybe you've heard it's short, maybe you've heard there's no real gameplay, maybe you just assume it's one of those indie games that people get emotional about but you're not convinced it's worth your time. But here's what makes Firewatch different. It might not have fast-paced action or combat, but what it does have is some of the best writing and character work in gaming. You play as Henry, a man who takes a summer job as a fire lookout in the Wyoming wilderness. Your only real connection to the outside world is Delilah, your supervisor, who you communicate with over a radio. And that's the heart of the game, your relationship with Delilah. The way you talk to her, the choices you make, the conversations you have, it all feels so real. And then slowly something strange starts happening. A shadow in the woods, a distant figure, a creeping sense that you're being watched. Firewatch is beautiful and peaceful, but also subtly unsettling. It's a story about loneliness, regret, and the things we run away from. So if it's been sitting in your backlog because you think it's just a walking sim, I mean, yes, it is, and I don't know why that's used as an insult, because it's an amazing walking sim and the genre itself is great too. If you're someone who cares for a great story, you'll find some of the best stories within this genre, and Firewatch is at the top of the list. And yeah, that was the last game on this list. I mean, I could definitely keep going, but I don't want to overwhelm you. There are so many games people leave in their backlog just because something about them seems intimidating or too different or not their usual thing. But if a game is loved by thousands, maybe, even if it doesn't seem like your type of game, it deserves a chance. I hope I was able to actually convince you to play one of these masterpieces. I also hope you enjoyed the video, and I also hope to see you in another video. Wow, I'm hoping for a lot of things. Anyway, bye bye!